All right, welcome everybody. If you're just joining, we'll give it just like 1 minute for more people to hop in, and then we'll get started with office hours. And while we're waiting, I'm going to go ahead and launch our first poll. So just go ahead and take your time answering it. How do you know, or how are you currently made aware of what needs to be security tested within your organization? So we've got a few options there that we've heard pretty frequently. And then if none of these apply to you, select other and feel free to drop in the chat exactly how you do find out what needs to be tested. Got so far. Cool. All right, well, we'll go ahead. I'll leave that open for anybody who's still joining. Go ahead and take that quick poll, and we'll end it in a second here. But welcome to this installment of Office Hours. We've got Aaron, our VP of User Experience, and Dan, our VP of Engineering, here to talk about our new capability that we just launched in beta, API discovery powered by HawkAI. So you may have noticed within the application a new attack surface tab. Maybe you've landed on the page, kind of poked around, just seen it, want to find out more what it's about, or you've just seen hopefully all the emails and mentions that this is coming and you want to learn more. So we're going to kick things off with pretty much a demo, just kind of walking through the ideal workflow of how to use this new feature, how it works, the benefits, and feel free to drop any questions you have in the Q&A or in the chat as we go. You don't have to wait till the end, and we'll answer those as we go. And if you want to give feedback, feel free to leave that too. And at the end, we have a special offer. So make sure to stick around for that to find out how you can get a $100 Amazon gift card. So I'll turn it over to Aaron and Dan.
All right. Thanks, Nicole.
How do I get a $100 Amazon gift card?
By hosting this session, I'll see what I can do.
Nice. There you go. Aaron, I was wondering if you could kind of talk a little bit about why we built this feature before we open it up.
Yeah, for sure.
Set the context.
So we're really super excited. We've been working on this for quite a while and just launched into open beta. But one of the things that we've been hearing in the market from customers and prospects and peers and things is like one of the biggest problems is not getting your apps under test. It's knowing what's out there. There's in today's world of like fast software delivery, teams are shipping code on a daily basis, sometimes many times a day. Things sort of get lost or they're not communicated. So like teams are struggling to figure out like and identify what new APIs are out there, what new applications are being tested, and then like what is the activity on those? Like how frequently are those being contributed to from a code base, right? Oh, sorry, I didn't move these poll questions are in my way. So what we decided to do was sort of like take on this challenge because like, what StackHawk does is, we do application security testing for apps and APIs, right? And we're trying to solve that problem by connecting to your code repositories and using that as the source of truth because it's the source of truth for like everything, your APIs, what your development teams are doing, the applications that are running, everything lives in that code base. So why not use that code base to go and identify what is a running testable app or an API, and then use that to get it under test in StackHawk, right? So what we have done is in this first version, we allow you to connect your GitHub repository to the StackHawk platform, and then using the magic of HawkAI, we look at markers and indicators of those code repositories, trying to identify what is a running testable application. So StackHawk does runtime dynamic testing, right, of those applications. So what we're trying to do is we look for frameworks, certain file names and things in markers around that code base or repository that tell us, what can be tested. And by doing that, we get a head start into being able to create a StackHawk application, tie that back to the code base, and then start to surface development activities so that you can see, do I have sufficient testing coverage versus what my engineering teams or development teams are doing? Is there a spike in development activity? Is there a new repository that I don't know about yet, right? Can I get out in front of that and start to do those things? So Dan's going to pull up and kind of walk through how to do this, right? And then, like Nicole said, ask all the questions.
Yeah. No, great. I think it's a great introduction. And so here's my personal story about it. Aaron, how long you been at StackHawk?
I've been at StackHawk since long before it was a security software company. And I'm responsible for the domain name stackhawk.com.
And so were you part of the team that figured out that naming our code repositories Osprey and Falcon and IaaS was like a good idea?
No, I was not part of that decision. Although I do know that one of our engineers pulled in a falconry encyclopedia. So it was an actual book, or I think he found a digital copy of the book, and that's how they went through everything, because names don't mean anything. And
Yeah.
everybody does it differently.
Well, man, when I joined, and I joined only about 2 years ago, I came in and started looking through our GitHub repo, and the first thing I said was, "What is an IaaS?" And then, is that an actual application? And this was actually when we were trying to dog food our own product and figure out what we needed to get under scan. And I did not know our own code repositories, what needed to be scanned. And I think that a lot of people have that experience. So let me kind of show you where everything starts, right? It's like, imagine, that you are leading an initiative at a company, and your goal is that by the end of the year, you need to get all of the applications that your company owns under test. And so you say, great, which ones are those? And the only thing that people can point you at is www.mycompany.com. And you say, okay, I mean, that's good, but that's kind of everything. It's all like behind an API gateway. It's all glued together. I want to understand the actual microservices and the architecture. And so the first thing that happens is you go and talk to the engineering team, and we send you an architecture diagram that was updated 2 years ago that has some of the services that you need to understand. But ultimately, you end up on this screen in GitHub, and you kind of look through all of these code repositories, and your goal at this point is to separate the wheat from the chaff, as it were. I need to take this list of repositories, filter out the ones that are documentation, that are libraries that other things depend on, and I need to filter it down to just the code repositories that produce an artifact that is capable of being scanned by StackHawk. But that's really hard. We talked to some customers that said that they took this sheet and they turned it into a spreadsheet, and then they went around to the engineering teams and said, hey, help us understand which of these repos we need to scan. And it took them a year of scheduling meetings, having conversations, to come back with effectively a vetted spreadsheet or a vetted list of repositories that they needed to scan. Except then, of course, by that point, engineers had created 20 new repositories or 50 new repositories, and it didn't even matter. So what we do is we take that list and we can import it into StackHawk. And so let me show you a little bit about how that works. So we've got this new attack surface tab, and I can go to that, and it talks about, hey, you need to figure out what your attack surface is, so connect us to GitHub. So I can click over, and I'll get sent over to GitHub, and I'll choose my org. This is DH's demo org. And then, wait, sorry. I needed to choose org number 2. Let me connect DH demo org 2. Okay, there we go. Now it's going to ask me to install. I choose all repositories because I really want to get all the information possible, and then I hit install. And then basically at this point, we do some asynchronous processing where we start pulling in all the repos and we start looking through them. So right now it's at 0 because it's going out to GitHub to get repositories and coming back. But I'm going to kind of skip over this process. It usually takes less than 10 minutes, but it's not great for a demo. So we'll kind of skip over that and look at the finished product. So I was on the integrations tab right here, and you'll see now I have 25 repositories, and that corresponds to the 25 repositories that we're just looking at. And so maybe some of these repositories have applications in them. I think if y'all, kind of know the landscape of tools, you'll know that right off the bat, there are a bunch of these like Grafana and Django that are actual applications. So let's see what StackHawk found. I can click on this attack surface now, and I can see all 25 of these repositories. I'm going to expand my page size so we're looking at all of them at the same time. So these are all of my repositories. And then what you'll notice is that some of these repositories have little twinkle stars next to them. And then they also have detected frameworks over here. And so what this tells us is that these applications, AI has determined that there is a runnable application inside of that repository. Maybe it has like a Docker file, or maybe it just has kind of things that lead us to believe that if you were to pull that code down and go through the README and things like that, that you could eventually build it into a working application. And so what we do based on the twinkle stars for our first pass is that we build you an attack surface. And so if I filter on the attack surface over here, I can see those 21 repositories that AI has said are part of our attack surface. And this begins to narrow it down. Now, my demo org, I had 25 total repositories. 21 of them were identified by AI as having an application. That's not typical. Usually what our customers see is about 30% of their code repositories have actual applications inside of them. So, suspend disbelief just a little bit for the ratio that I just got here. But the point remains that the repositories that are part of the attack surface come in here. And maybe some of these, I look at them and I either know for a fact that it's not a repository, or maybe I don't want to test it for whatever reason. And so these 21 repos, like maybe Django, like, hey, this is an internal tool. I don't want this to be considered part of my attack surface, so I'm going to remove that. And by the same token, I can go to my all repositories page, and AI does its best, but maybe you really want to be scanning Kubernetes. And so I can actually add that to the attack surface. It doesn't gain any twinkle stars, so AI still doesn't think that it's an application, but you can still add and remove it from your attack surface. And you'll still see that we don't detect any frameworks inside of it. So now over on this attack surface page, I've got this wheel of completion up here. And it says I've got 21 things in my attack surface, but none of them are currently covered. And for StackHawk, what that means is that you haven't created an application and you're not actually scanning it yet. So let's see how we can do that. If I take this Grafana application, for example, we can turn that into a StackHawk application by clicking the Create an Application button. And now over on the application page, and if you already have StackHawk set up, you'll have multiple applications over here. But you can see I have a new Grafana application that was created. And then we prompt you to go and create an environment. So an environment is where the scans themselves end up going. So I can go and create an environment, and it leads me through how to do that. And I'll call it dev. It's not assigned to a team. And got to tell us what you want to scan. And we'll create an application. Okay, so this is now an environment. It's got an application ID, and we're ready to start scanning it. And let me just expand, and we'll actually send a scan in here so you can see what happens. So here I'm going to actually kick off a scan. I've got a terminal running here. I've got an application. It's a known vulnerable application that we've built called Java Spring Vulny. I'm going to pass in that application ID that I just got, and that will kick off a scan. And then we should see it start if I go to this scan page. We will see it appear, and we'll see that run. And if I go back to my applications, now you can see that this has scans associated to it. And so that's basically how you take an application like Grafana. We add it to our attack surface. AI added this to our attack surface. Then we connected it to an application, and then we ran a scan that sent data to that application. And so now you'll see that my wheel of completion says that I have one application one repo that's actually covered at this point. So Grafana is under test, it's being scanned. And that's basically how we think about your attack surface, is that you need to move things in and out of it. It's a living thing. So we send you emails whenever a new repository is added to your GitHub repositories, and we detect that it's new. We send you weekly updates talking about kind of what's happening with the scans that are going on and how your applications are behaving. And this allows you to really get that sense that not only am I scanning things really thoroughly, quickly, deeply, but I actually understand the full problem, right? I've got these 25 code repositories. I've identified 21 of them as part of the attack surface. I've gotten those 21 under test, and they're being actively scanned on a weekly basis or on every pull request.
Thanks. Dan, do you want to talk a little bit about the different types of architecture that we support with this, like mono repos and microservices?
Yeah, great. I think that so when it comes to the way that engineering teams lay out their code repositories, there's so many different ways to do it. And for so much of us, like the actual code repositories evolve over time. You might start off with one code repository. It's got one application. It's your, Rails app. You get your company stood up, for example, and great. And then you hire, kind of your 12th or, 15th or 20th engineer, and all of a sudden you realize like, hey, I got to start splitting this thing up. And so maybe you get into a world where you just create a second folder in your repository. And all of a sudden you either have a monolithic architecture, which means that you have a lot of API endpoints in a single code repository, or you start getting into more of a microservice architecture where you have many code repositories that have fewer endpoints inside of them. Um, and that can happen where you have multiple repositories that go into that each produce their own server, or you might have a single repository that produces multiple servers. And companies, they're all different. People are just doing different things, and like I said, it's all an evolution. And so we support being able to. Our goal is for the security team to really understand how the repositories are laid out and what it means. And so we support multiple ways of mapping things. So let's say, for example, that Grafana and Umami, for whatever reason, are deployed in a way where the URL, like example.org, for example, resolves to both of them. And so the way that you want to think about it is that my URL or my application, I want all of my scans to go in there, but when I find a result, it's going to either belong to Grafana or Umami. And I need to be able to represent that in the way that I'm managing my attack surface. So Umami, I can actually take this and choose an existing application and map that to Grafana. And so now Grafana and Umami are both mapped to the same StackHawk application. And but maybe you want to do something a little bit different. Like maybe Umami is also deployed to a separate service, and so you need to represent it with multiple applications, and so that is possible as well. If I create a custom application, and we'll go through this, and this one we'll call Umami secondary API or something. Again, no team. We'll create a development environment. And this is, or maybe this is at example2.org. And we'll say we're creating an other org. Okay. So now I have two applications here. And I can go back to Umami and click on manage and say, okay, not only are you if I get an alert from Grafana, then Umami could be the problem. But it also is this Umami secondary application. So I'm going to save that. And so now Umami is mapped to two different applications. And Grafana is mapped to an application. And Umami and Grafana are both mapped to the same application. So it's probably overly complicated what I just said, but the point is the way that things are deployed into staging or production may not necessarily map one-to-one with your repositories. And we want to make it so that you can represent your repositories and your running applications and map them together so that scan results make sense in either applications from their perspective. Would you add anything else, Aaron?
Not to that part. I think what's important from here is like thinking like through once you have all of your repos mapped to a single or multiple applications, as like the security team or the AppSec sort of my person that would come in and sort of take advantage of the attack surface pages. We don't have it in this demo, but one of the things that we're trying to do is surface that development activity, right? So you see that we're showing the last commit for that repository, which branch was it on, and it's not here, but when it's available, we actually show who that person was that actually performed that last commit, right? So if there are questions about this repository, or there's a lot of activity and you're not quite sure who to go talk to, which isn't a problem in every organization, but it is a challenge in some, right? Who do I need to go talk to? Why is there so much activity going on? Why is there something broken? Is this not being tested? Or are we not automating this on every pull request or release or anything, and I can start to have those conversations, and I can go to the team, I can go to the person, and we can figure things out and start to get things tested, right? And really raise that confidence level around our testing posture, right?
Mm-hmm. I think we had a great question about risk level. Just so everyone knows, the risk level is actually a user defined field. I can go in and edit an application and set its risk level, set the data type that is part of it. This just gives you more information when you're triaging vulnerabilities or findings to understand the context of that finding. So I can mark this Grafana application as critical, but by default, everything is created with a default risk level of low and data type of unknown.
I guess, now's the time to ask some more questions. If I don't know if I'm allowed to say this one, I would hope so. But we are working on other code repository systems besides GitHub. The team is currently actively working on Azure repos, so we will be able to support multiple code repositories in addition to GitHub.
Mm-hmm.
So that's coming pretty soon as well. And then we're looking at a couple others, trying to prioritize in the roadmap which ones we want to take on first. But we will have additional code repositories that you can use in identifying your attack surface. I look at the other questions.
I think there was some questions to make sure we're contrasting this with GitHub's advanced security. I know because I think one of the things we start talking about code repositories, and then people's minds go to static analysis, or they just think of GitHub's advanced security. And I think these are still complementary technologies. You can actually link together your SAST findings, which is what GitHub advanced security gives you. You can link those together with your the things that you get from our DAST findings as well. And I can actually show that really quickly. If I jump into this other demo application, we can look at some of the scans that have come. And you can see that this scan, for example, is linked up with SAST findings. And so if I click into this scan, I can look at this SQL injection vulnerability. And I understand this SQL injection vulnerability from the DAST perspective. I can actually show you exactly, what we sent in and the response and why we think this is a vulnerability. But then also you can click on this GitHub code QL and go and see the actual line of code where the vulnerability happened. And so we've got that ability to link together the SAST findings and the DAST findings. And we do that with GitHub Code QL as part of GitHub Advanced Security, and we also do that with Sneak Code as well. So SaaS providers make that easy.
Joel, do we have other poll questions we're going to ask?
Yeah, I wanted to go back to the wheel of completeness and talk about that a little bit more. And I have a poll question to complement. So let me go ahead and launch that. Did it go? Okay. So what is your target percentage for APIs and apps under test? So organizational goals, do you have any that are set that you're trying to achieve? We put some ranges here, or maybe, this is your scanning is completely compliance based and that's what you use to guide what you're scanning and not necessarily a certain percentage goal. But go ahead and take that when you get a chance. And then one question that came in for you guys is, can this be exported as a PDF basically? Like how can somebody share these coverage percentages, results, just basically show how they're tracking towards their security program?
No, that is such a good question. And honestly, I think those kind of two questions really go together. Um, I think when we talk to customers, or at least I'll give my answer, Aaron, and we can maybe even show some screenshots about kind of what's coming. Um, I think more than anything, what we see from modern companies is that they want to see improvement in the way that their security posture is working, because I think that there is an understanding in the security community that the attack surface in our case, or kind of the general scope of what they're trying to secure, is always a moving target. It's always either there's more repositories coming in or there's more APIs being built. Like software is all about evolution. And so we see companies, what they're really targeting is seeing their wheel of completeness, or kind of their attack surface coverage, make improvements over the course of the next year. So maybe they set as like a threshold, like, hey, we'd ultimately like to be to 50 or 75%. But really what we're measuring the team on is, did you go from having no knowledge to understanding the problem to getting our high risk things under test to, doing this, doing that, doing that. And a lot of the time that involves communicating what's happening inside of the security program to a CISO or something like that. And usually the data that usually what you don't want to do is just give a CISO a big list of, here's how many vulnerabilities here's how many high, mediums, and lows we have in this system. Because that story is so black and white. You either have high vulnerabilities or you don't have high vulnerabilities. And again, what I think you want to be showing to, VPs and C-level people is more about how the program is evolving and how you're improving the maturity of your system. And so what we're focused on is giving people kind of those PDFs being a way to talk about artifacts that you can take up the chain. And so we're talking about how to arm people with artifacts that don't just give data, but they actually give teams insights to show to people, to show them how things are improving. And so we have features that we're building that are kind of in that reporting vein, that are looking more at insights, and it's what we are calling tentatively oversight. And it's all about kind of showing people, how their program is doing, how it's maturing, stuff like that. So I don't know if we want to talk about any more of that.
I unfortunately don't have the mock-ups prepared for this.
Okay.
Put you on the spot there.
Yeah, but like what Dan's talking about is like what we're trying to do is like complete the cycle, right? Like the first part is identifying what exists. What do you need? What do you know about? What don't you know about? And getting that out there and getting it mapped, and then getting that under test using StackHawk to test those applications and APIs, automate those in your CI pipelines. Doing the StackHawk thing, right? And then the last part is like that ongoing sort of telemetry data, like what is going on, what is the development activity, what are new APIs that are popping up versus what is that testing around the ones that we've identified, and then compare that to the development activity, right? Teams ship software, our team ships software all the time, right? It's just modern software development. Teams push software, there's constantly changes going out. And is our testing strategy able to keep up with the speed at which those teams are shipping software, right? So what we're trying to do is surface that data to where you can, one, report, like Dan talked about, report that up the chain, keep your CISOs and everybody happy and informed about what's going on and confident that we have sufficient coverage, right? But as a security team, security professional, it gives you the insights into what's going on so that you can start to make decisions and have conversations, right? And figure out why, if we have processes in place, why wasn't the processes followed, right? What's going on? Is there a big release? We've got 1,000 releases to the code base, but we've only tested like 1 or 2 of them. There's that huge disconnect. But now we're arming you with that information so you can start to make those decisions, and have those conversations with the team and be able to see everything across, both your security testing and your development activities. Next time I'll have a picture, I promise.
But I think needless to say, the communication aspect of it, we know that that's important, and we're working on that after we've kind of gotten the base functionality out.
Absolutely.
Aaron, you mentioned something about what you currently know about. And that's something else that we're pretty curious. And I have another poll for that I'll go ahead and launch. So what is the percentage of identified apps or APIs in your organization? So this could be a guess, could be just your gut intuition, or maybe you do know, but what's that range of what you think that you're already aware of before using something like the attack surface functionality to find out?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know, being a product person, this is like a great question for me. So then we are able to like dig in to ask those questions like, why are you confident about that percentage number, or why are you not confident about that? And what are the processes in place, and what are the things that happen when something slips, right? Like, where does that breakdown happen and why does that happen? And if you had something that was able to automate the identification of these things, how would that help you communicate with your team and make sure that you're on top of everything, that you're increasing that number to 100%, right? I think that's the goal for everybody.
Yeah. And on that automation of like being notified, another question that we have is, are there any notifications for when a new API is identified, or do we have any plans to add in some automatic notifications so somebody doesn't have to go back to the page?
I don't remember if it's live yet, but we do have we will have an email notification to start for the beta of when we identify or when a new repo pops up in GitHub, and we're working on some other things as well. But the plan is to start to build more like notifications, not just around like repositories, but everything within StackOff, right? Like, things are happening. Here's what's going on. Here's what something needs your attention. But we're definitely working towards improving that and getting more notifications out there.
Excellent. All right. We've only got, or we'll just take like a few more minutes. So any more questions that you guys have, please drop them in. I'll use this time to do my little promo really quick. But we are, so I mentioned a $100 Amazon gift card in the beginning. So we are looking to collect more feedback from customers using this feature. So if you're willing to connect to GitHub, maybe you're already connected to GitHub and you're halfway there, and want to just basically hang out with probably Aaron or our product manager, Brian, and let us just watch you poke around with the feature, give us some feedback. You can always ask questions there. But all you have to do is book and complete one of those feedback sessions, and we'll send you a $100 Amazon gift card. So let me drop that scheduling link in the chat. And then if you don't have a chance to grab it from here, if that doesn't happen, you'll also get an email with the recording, and I'll include this link as well. So you can grab some time with the product team and just let us know what you think.
We're a hoot, which I know is an owl pun, but still.
Nice one.
Bad jokes to the rescue.
Let me make sure we covered all the questions. Yeah, I think that was pretty much all the questions in my log.
Cool.
Sweet.
They're good.
Very thorough, which is always good. But as I said, this will be made available via email, and then we'll post the recording somewhere as well, so you can access it at any time if you need more help as you're actually going through the product and taking advantage of this. Do you guys have anything else that you didn't get to say?
Thanks everybody for listening to us banter and watching
Yeah, there you
demos.
go.
Oh, awesome. We got somebody ready to try it with the team. Yeah, we would love to hear how that goes. So please take advantage of that link. We'd love to send you something, hang out, just hear how it's working out for you. All right. Thanks, guys. Thanks, Dan and Aaron.
Yeah, thank you, Nicole.
We'll see you on the next
everybody.
one. Bye,
Okay,
guys.
bye, y'all.